When most people think of the borders of the Roman Empire, they think that the frontier was at Hadrian's Wall, but this is actually a very common misconception because the Romans ventured much further northwards. And did you know that East Lothian at times was within the boundary of the Roman Empire? Although it may not look like it, I'm actually standing on the site of a 2nd century Roman fort.
Hello there. Welcome to my channel. My name is Harry Glasgow and I am the Lowland Historian.
So today I am in Musselburgh, or more precisely the village of Inveresk. Inveresk occupies a ridge about 20 to 25 metres above sea level. You can see why the Romans chose Inveresk as the strategic location for their fort. The elevated ground here commands magnificent, unhindered views onto the Forth estuary below. The elevated position above the River Esk, which flows around and to the Forth estuary over there, meant that the Romans could control traffic on the River Esk. The loop over here would mean that any traffic passing through would be slowed down, and the Romans could launch an attack on an unsuspecting foe. So when and why was the Roman fort at Inveresk established? The fort at Inveresk is thought to have been established in the immediate aftermath of the invasion of Scotland by the Emperor Antoninus Pius. After the death of Hadrian, Antoninus Pius became emperor, and perhaps he needed to show his strength. The barbarians north of Hadrian's Wall had posed problems for the Romans for several years, and perhaps uh, the push northwards was a way of showing his strength. Uh, the fort at Inveresk was established as a strategic base. In around the year AD 142, Antoninus Wall was established. This stretched from the Forth to the Clyde on the narrowest stretch of land in Scotland. In the year AD 165, after the death of Emperor Antoninus Pius, Antoninus Wall was abandoned, and the Romans retreated southwards back to Hadrian's Wall. All of the forts in the stretch of land between Hadrian's and Antoninus Wall were abandoned, including Inveresk.
Now the fort was quite large, covering around 6.6 acres, so initially archaeologists suspected that this was a cavalry fort. In 2009, a tombstone was found nearby depicting a Roman governor's guard cavalry trooper. If it was indeed a cavalry fort, then we could expect several hundred men to have inhabited the fort, and lots of horses. Inveresk would have supported the men on Antoninus Wall by acting as a strategic base. Inveresk commanded the Forth estuary and would be able to act as a supply base for both land and maritime operations in support of Antoninus Wall. Inveresk would also have allowed the Romans to keep a more secure grip on the buffer zone between Hadrian's Wall and Antoninus Wall. This buffer zone on the eastern flank was inhabited by the Votadini tribe. These lands were extremely fertile and would have supplied much needed grain to the Romans. The Votadini tribe were known to have coexisted with the Romans, but a little extra show of force surely could not do any harm for Rome, right?
I will make future videos on Antoninus Wall and the Votadini tribe, but for today our focus is at Inveresk. So now that I have established why the Roman fort at Inveresk came to exist, let's explore the daily lives of the people that lived here. Due to the nature of the Roman fort at Inveresk and how large it was by Roman standards, a civilian settlement, which the Romans called a vicus, soon came to be, and this was located east of the settlement at Inveresk. Now this settlement would have housed families of the soldiers and the men who served in the garrison, and it would have also housed traders who sold their wares. Archaeologists have uncovered a number of artifacts at the settlement, from pottery, including Samian ware, to metal-working fragments, cutlery, jewellery, and even a game board, which proves that the Romans weren't so hardy after all, and they could have fun. Archaeologists also uncovered a curved building. They suspect this to have been an amphitheatre. If that was the case, then lots of activities could have taken place, including gladiatorial combat, music, dancing, public executions, and religious activities. And that brings me on to my next point. What religion was worshipped at Inveresk? In 2010, archaeologists uncovered two stone altars. The first altar was of the sun god Sol, and the second altar was of Mithras. Now, if there was a cult of Mithras here, then this would be the most northern known example of Romans worshipping the deity of Mithras. So, what was the cult of Mithras? Well, the cult of Mithras represented the triumph of good over evil, the light over darkness, and the cult was reserved only for men. The belief in Mithras triumphing over evil would have been good motivation for the soldiers here at Inveresk. They would have seen their daily activity fighting the hostile tribes as a good passage to the afterlife. So I'm actually standing right here where the two stone altars of Sol and Mithras were uncovered. Today, the Louisville Park Cricket Pavilion stands over where the Temple of Mithras might have been once upon a time.
So what would these two altars have looked like? Well, firstly, the manner in which they were presented is most striking. The Temple of Mithras would have been located underground, and the room would have been almost entirely pitch black. However, the altar depicting the sun god Sol would have been lit up from behind, and so the light would beam through his eyes, mouth, and the rays above his head. Here was light triumphing over darkness. The statue also featured carvings of the seasons, depicted as four female deities. The passage of time was a very important theme in the cult of Mithras. Now the other altar, which was dedicated to Mithras himself, has carvings on it which are linked with Apollo, a griffin, that mythical creature whose body was composed of a lion and eagle, a lyre, that famous stringed instrument, and finally a plectrum, which was a small tool to be used hand in hand with the lyre, like a guitar pick today. Both altars were dedicated by the same legionary centurion who may have been in command of the garrison at Inveresk during the period the fort existed under Antoninus Pius. Both altars were quite fragmented on discovery, but have since been restored close to their original form. If you are wondering where you can see these altars, then you are in luck, because the National Museum of Scotland will be showcasing these two altars for the very first time, amongst other artefacts in their exhibition titled Roman Scotland: Life on the Edge of the Empire, which will begin in November this year. If you are interested in visiting the site at Inveresk itself, unfortunately there are hardly any visible remains of the fort. You can walk around the village at Inveresk and imagine the sprawling mass of the fort and Roman soldiers and civilians shuffling around you. Inveresk village itself is very fascinating, as it features many old and historic buildings from the 18th and 19th century, many of which were inhabited by famous Scottish figures. It is well worth a stroll around the village, and you can visit the stunning gardens of Inveresk Lodge, which is run by the National Trust.
So I thought since we were in Musselburgh, we should film the old bridge, which locals call the Roman Bridge. Now, the bridge here itself dates to 1597, with some medieval elements to it, but in the late 1st century AD, the Romans did build a crossing here at the Esk.
A quick introduction to this channel, since it is my first video. I've seen that there are a great many people on YouTube covering Scottish history in the Highlands, but not too many in the Lowlands, and hardly any in East Lothian, the Scottish borders, and Dumfries and Galloway. The aim of this channel is to promote Lowland history and identity by uncovering the less explored regions of Scotland that are not so touristy. Many people who visit Scotland bypass southern Scotland entirely, aside from Edinburgh, and so I will attempt to do justice to the people that live here. I will no doubt explore other periods of Scottish and British history, but there is so much to uncover in the Lowlands, and so I will begin here first. Now that is all for me to say today. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to my channel. That way I can reach more people worldwide. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have learned something new today. I hope you will visit Inveresk for yourself. Bye.